Hey everybody, today I'll be taking a look at Spider-Man Miles Morales. As someone who loved the 2018 Spider-Man game, I was thrilled when I heard a new one was coming to the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. Miles Morales is definitely a smaller, more bite-sized game, but it still has a decent amount that it feels like a solid entry and an overall great experience. Miles Morales takes place on the same streets of Manhattan as the original game, so you'll recognize a lot of the same visuals and graphics, but it's been given a sizable upgrade, especially for the PS5 version that I played it on. The streets, the lighting, the characters all look much better, but it is still the same city. This isn't really a bad thing because really it's just a set piece for the stories and interactions, and there's definitely some new buildings and a new city center in this game that really make it feel a little bit different than previously. It really feels in a lot of ways like a tech demo that was made into a fantastic story to really show off what the PS5 is capable of. And that's not a bad thing, especially if you're a fan of the original game. Just getting more of the same is really kind of what I was looking for after playing the 2018 Spider-Man. This time you play as Miles Morales instead of Peter's Spider-Man. Miles is coming into his own as his own unique Spider-Man and really dealing with the challenges of living in Pete's shadow. Pete, having defended the city and helping it out for years, is really making it difficult for Miles to transition into, especially when he's dealing with such a significant amount of villains and other things going on and trying to learn his powers while also dealing with his own personal challenges and problems in his own life. People in the city oftentimes comment about how they want the other Spider-Man, or where is he at, rather than Miles, because they know he's just not as good. At the beginning of the game, there's a fantastic setup where Miles fails spectacularly trying to assist Pete in defeating a villain. He screws up in all the wrong ways and makes it even worse than had he just not have been there. In a lot of ways, it really sets this game up as a fantastic origin story as Miles tries to come into his own as Pete leaves and trying to defend the city. They introduce some new characters like the Tinkerer and other villains in fantastic ways and make them much more interesting than they ever were in like the comic books or other areas. I really felt like this game just did a pretty good job at making its own unique thing that really gives Miles his own opportunities to confront his own problems in his own ways without having to rely on Pete. And it's really setting up a fantastic third game in the series where you might have even both characters maybe that you're playing as. The overall gameplay itself is very similar to the 2018 Spider-Man, and this might be one area where people might be a little bit disappointed because Miles, while feeling significantly different with his Venom powers, is more or less kind of just the same. You're still using a lot of the same web swinging and powers. He does some unique things like a cloaking ability and other aspects that kind of make him a little bit different, especially with the Venom powers, like them electric attacks. The animations are one area that they really tweak Miles quite a bit different from Pete. He has much more of a flashy style, going upside down, doing different spins and things as he's doing attacks or web swinging, and this makes him feel like a very distinct character and different from Pete in a way that's really good. As far as the open world and side quest areas go, this game is a bit of a step down, I felt like, from the 2018 version. There's less overall content, which is good, but a lot of the open world side content is kind of bland. There's a couple, like the one about the cat named Spider-Man, that's pretty interesting, but there's a ton that are just super boring and uninteresting. Fortunately, there isn't a lot here, so even though I went through a bunch of them, I didn't feel like I wasted too much time, but I did feel like a lot of these were kind of just excuses to get some extra combat or some extra moving around, but they didn't really feel like they added much to the overall experience, and I wouldn't really recommend wasting your time going through a lot of the side quests, except for the ones that have a little bit more of a narrative aspect to them, and not the ones that are just kind of like go to a generic area, beat some guys up, or go to an area and talk to somebody and then quickly help them with something for 2 seconds. As far as the sound goes, it's pretty similar to the 2018 Spider-Man, but it has a very distinct feeling that makes it feel like you're playing something different with Miles. It has more of a hip-hop, pop kind of feel over the more theatrical side of the music. You still get a lot of the same beats and the same like flow of the music, but it feels like it's been like remixed a bit, which isn't a bad thing. It makes Miles feel a little bit different as a character. The graphics are pretty good for the most part. I kind of touched on this earlier, but they made some significant upgrades to like the PS5, which gives you new lighting and stuff that makes the world feel a lot more interesting. The game does take place in more of a Christmas winter setting, which does give it a little bit of a facelift graphically. Overall, Miles Morales is a pretty fun expansion pack, effectively, is what you could call it, to the 2018 Spider-Man. It's not like a complete owned game, right? You only get like 8 to 10 hours out of the story alone, another like 2 hours after that doing the side content, which isn't a bad thing because effectively this game is really just kind of like a large expansion or DLC. You're getting a whole new character, new storylines, new things to do, but it's not priced at like a full $60, which helps as well. It's pretty fun if you really liked the original 2018 Spider-Man. I definitely highly recommend it. I'd say this game gets an 8 out of 10. It's not like amazing, and I really need the third game in the series to really take the bar up a little bit and add some new stuff, but it's overall a pretty fun, great experience. You get new villains, new characters to interact with. Miles is a lot of fun to play, and it really feels like it's building to this third game where you're going to get 2 characters, both Miles and Pete, to play as, with their own interesting, unique stories. I really would have liked to see a little bit more development here, a little bit more things that are new, rather than just kind of facelifting the overall city, but I don't think that's really a bad thing. Really, like I said, if you loved the original game just like me, you're going to love this game.